All right, shalom. Will be in Beshiri or Genesis chapter 44, picking up where we left off a few weeks back. Remember, we're in the story of Yusuf and his brothers. We are coming near to the end of that portion of our history. Um, he was sold into slavery. He underwent a lot of hardships. He has already once saved the people of Israel, even though we weren't a nation yet. We were a people, and his brothers had come into Mitzrayim to purchase food, not knowing that he had become the governor thereof. He sent them back with food and instructions not to come back to before his face unless they brought Benjamin with them. And they didn't believe that they could do that because they didn't believe that Yaakov was going to allow them to do so. But at the end of chapter 43, Yaakov decided to send Benjamin with them the second time, lest the people starve. It says, Then he, meaning Yusuf, instructed his house steward as follows: Fill the men's bags with food, as much as they can carry, and put each one's money in the mouth of his bag. Put my silver goblet in the mouth of the bag of the youngest one, together with his money for the rations. And he did as Yusuf told him. Now, a lot of people get hung up in this part of the story and the make a big deal out of why is Yusuf giving these particular instructions, and that is an important study in looking at the gift of life. He was giving them life-sustaining grain, but there's also a picture of eternal life. It's a picture of salvation, sanctification, because they came with the very best that they had, and they put it basically before the king, before the right hand of the Pharaoh, and wanted to purchase food to keep themselves alive. And there's really no monetary value that is truly equivalent to the saving of a life. Okay, when Hattie got sick and had to be life flighted, I actually had people ask me, well, was it really so severe? That's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars for the life flight, and it's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars for her to be in the special hospital and the special ward. And my question was, what dollar value do you put on your child's life? Okay, and so we're looking at a situation here where I think the picture that a lot of people miss is the picture of they came with all they had and they put it before him, and he gave it back to them with the gift of life. Okay, because nothing that they had could have been equivalent to the value of saving the lives of the people. Okay, and I think the fact that it's the patriarchs of Israel who come before him, the other patriarchs come before him, all of them, and all of them together aren't able to purchase the sanctification or purchase the salvation of the people. But the one who speaks for the absolute authority was able to give it to them as a gift. I think that's a messianic typology there that I've never heard taught anywhere, but I think it just jumps out at me every time I read the story. It says, with the first light of morning, the men were sent off with their pack animals. They had just left the city and had not gone far when Yusuf said to his steward, Up, go after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, Why did you repay good with evil? It is the very one from which my master drinks, and which he uses for divination. It is a wicked thing for you to do. He overtook them and spoke the words to them. And they said to him, Why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything of the kind. Here we brought back to you from the land of Canaan, Canaani, the money that we found in the mouths of our bags. How then could we have stolen any silver or gold from your master's house? Whichever of your servants it is found with shall die. The rest of us, moreover, shall become slaves to my Lord. We have a pattern here that we see. Um, if you look back at the flight from Lavan, okay, when they were leaving, when they left Padan Aram and they fled back to the Holy Land, okay, and they were overtaken by Lavan and his men, and the accusation was made. It was basically, it was like, who took the household idols, okay, and Yaakov was very quick to say, basically, whoever it's found with can die. That's just how it's going to be, because I don't believe anybody with me took this. We see a repetition here in the older brothers very hastily saying, hey, whoever took the silver and gold, that person can die, and the rest of us will be slaves, because we know we didn't do anything. And I think there's an often missed lesson there, about speaking too hastily, about without knowing all of the details. There's a proverb that says, I'm trying to think what chapter it's in, but in Proverbs it talks about, to he who answers a question before he understands it or before he knows it, um, to him it is folly. And I've seen a lot of cases, and I've been guilty of it too, making a judgment, answering something, especially something that needs to be judged according to Torah, and we see what's on the surface, but we don't dig deep enough into the situation to really know what's going on, and we answer it too quickly, and it is a folly to us, and not only to us, but it ruins our testimonies with non-believers or with other believers if we answer something and we haven't heard all the details or haven't investigated. He replied, although what you are proposing is right, only the one with whom it is found shall be my slave, but the rest of you shall go free. So the steward acknowledges there that what the brothers are saying, is a fair retribution. Whoever the thief is dies, and the rest of you are guilty by association. And while there's a lot of people who say, well, you can't judge people guilty by association. It happens all the time. Okay, it happens in the court of law. They have the thing, mutual possession or community possession. Okay, if I'm driving down the road and somebody's with me and they're in my car and they have, I don't know, drugs or something on them that they're not allowed to have, or I don't know, they just committed a crime and then called me and asked me for a ride. Okay, I become not necessarily automatically guilty, but I become a suspect. Okay, and I'm going to have to do some serious explaining in front of a judge. Okay, um, the we can ruin our testimonies by allowing ourselves to appear not above reproach. Okay, Scripture commands us to avoid even the appearance of sin, and too often, if we're not careful, and it can be anything. It can be being with someone who's doing some wrong thing and not calling them out on it. Okay, sometimes we can't help but be around people who do wrong things, right? Because we have human beings around us all day, just like we're human beings and we make mistakes and we do bad things. But if we're around someone and they're doing those wrong things and we just quietly watch them do it, then what that says to other people is that we're condoning it. Okay? Or if we hear something that we know is not true, it's a lie being told about someone else or about us, and it is a damaging thing, and we know it's not true, and yet we just bite our tongues and don't tell the truth, then we're condoning that lie. My grandfather used to say, if you work for a liar um, and you condone his lies, what does that make you? Well, the answer is it makes you a liar. Okay, and that's always stuck with me. I've missed promotions because I wouldn't go along with the lie, but I don't regret that. I don't regret that at all because at the end of the day, I don't want to be guilty of damaging someone else's reputation by not speaking up. So each one hastened to lower his bag to the ground, and each one opened his bag. He searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the goblet turned up in Benjamin's bag. As or at this they rent their clothes. Each reloaded his pack animal, and they returned to the city. Now he just said, whoever it's found with, that person will be my slave. The rest of you are free to go. And yet they all turned around and went back to the city. Why? I think in large part is because they made a promise to their father. They made an agreement that if anything were to happen to Benjamin, they would be held guilty. Okay, um, Reuben especially, but all of them, I'm sure, felt this burden on their shoulders at this point. I mean, they rent their clothes as though he had just died. So now they have to figure out a way to bring him home, or they probably don't feel like they can go home. Okay. Now, I know some people get really tired of me quoting this play, but there's so much about Jewish culture that is brought out so truthfully in Fiddler on the Roof. Okay, we made an agreement, and with us, an agreement is an agreement. Y'all remember that scene? Okay, and people laugh at it, but the whole movie, or the whole, we watched it as a movie, but the whole musical is about Jewish culture and tradition. Okay, and here we get a glimpse of that tradition. We can't just go home and say, Dad, we messed up, and Benjamin's a slave now. They made an agreement, and at least for Reuben, an agreement is an agreement, and the rest of them probably knew if Reuben didn't go back and they did, they're probably going to catch uh, the heat from their father as much as Reuben would have, because they were there when the whole thing went down. When Yehudah and his brothers entered the house of Yusuf, who was still there, they threw themselves on the ground before him. Did you catch that? They all threw themselves on the ground in front of him. Do y'all remember his dream? His dream of the stars bowing down to him and the sheaves of wheat bowing down to him. Yusuf said to them, "What is the deed that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me practices divination?" In other words, do you not know that I can discern? And I'm really torn about that word divination. Okay, because I've been told that the proper translation there would be discernment. Okay, however, he implies that the cup is involved, which implies some sort of magical sorcery type thing that we're forbidden to do. And so best answer solution I can come to as to why he uses that is that he was still portraying himself to them as a Mitzrayim. Okay, and that's the term that the Mitzrayim would have used. Um, had he already revealed himself to them as their brother, I believe he would have said discernment. Okay. Yehuda replied, "What can we say to my Lord?" Literally, the word there means my master. How can we plead? How can we prove our innocence? Okay. You notice they're not even charged with the crime, and yet they're pleading for their innocence. And I think the gist there is a judge is more likely to grant an extra request to someone who's proven themselves innocent than he is to, or she is to, grant this that same request to someone who's been found guilty. Okay, and so they're there to argue for the release of their brother so that they can go home. But before they do that, they need to show him that they've done no wrong. Elohim has uncovered the crime of your servants. Here we are, then, slaves of my master. The rest of us, as much as he in whose possession the goblet was found. In other words, we're responsible for him. Even though we didn't take it, we're responsible. You know, I read this morning and I was reminded of a saying, and it's interesting because Yusef is the steward. He was the steward for his father, although the term wasn't used that way. He was the steward for his original master in Potiphar in Mitzrayim. He became the steward for the jailer. He became the steward for Pharaoh. He has a steward who answers to him. And now these brothers are basically saying to him, finally, after all these years, taking responsibility for their youngest brother, and basically saying that they are their father's stewards caring for their brother. And it occurred to me, my grandfather, an old Navy man, used to say, and I found it holds true, if you're in charge of men and one of them messes up, you messed up by letting them mess up. Okay? And although that can't be 100% true because you can't always have your eyes on every person under your authority, if you're depending upon, like I said, he had a lot of guys who served under him in the Navy. I've found that when you're in a leadership position, there's a lot of truth to that, regardless of what that position is. Whether you're a teacher over a class, whether you're a supervisor in your work. I feel, I did a lot of team lead before this promotion I just got, and now I'm in charge not only of making the decisions in the moment. If someone makes wrong decisions, I'm responsible now for going back and teaching them how to make the right decisions on the team, and that's a little more responsibility. So if they mess up, I messed up by letting them mess up. Maybe not the first time, but if it becomes a pattern, it's probably because I didn't catch it the first time or I didn't take it seriously enough. Okay, these brothers are basically saying to Yusef, Binyamin screwed up, so we messed up. We didn't watch him closely enough. But he replied, far be it from me to act thus. Only he in whose possession the goblet was found shall be my slave. The rest of you go back in peace to your father. Of course, he knew they couldn't. Then Yehuda went up to him and said, please, my master, let your servant appeal to my master, and do not be impatient with your servant, you who are the equal of Pharaoh. Was he truly the equal of Pharaoh? No, but from where they were to where he was, I think it was kind of like, is the mountain equivalent to the moon? No, but if I'm standing at the base of the mountain and I look up, it looks like they're at the same height. My master asked his servants, have you a father or another brother? We told you, my master, we have an old father, and there is a child of his old age. The youngest, his full brother, is dead, so that he alone is left of his mother, and his father dotes on him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set eyes on him. We said to my master, the boy cannot leave his father. If he were to leave him, his father would die. But you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, do not let me see your faces. When we came back to your servant, my father, he reported, we reported my master's words to him. Later, our father said, go back and procure some food for us. We answered, we cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us can we go down, for we may not show our faces to the man unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant, my father, said to us, as you know, my wife bore me 2 sons, but one is gone from me. And I said, alas, he was torn by a beast, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and he meets with disaster, you will send my white head down to Sheol in sorrow. And I just a few months ago heard a radio preacher preaching on this chapter, and he said, and maybe the translation he was reading from says this, I don't know, but he said that the white hair of Yaakov would go down to hell in sorrow. That is not what Sheol means. Sheol means the grave. Sheol means something that is buried and cannot be seen. Sheol, if you go back here in the back bedroom where Leah lives now, it used to be Yaakov's bedroom. If you go in there, there's a place in the floor where a panel pulls up, and you can go down the stairs into an old root cellar. Okay, it's under the old that used to be a summer kitchen before it was finished off. And if you go down in the root cellar and you close it, you are in Sheol, literally. Okay, if you take the word literally, you are buried under the ground. You are in Sheol. That is what the word means. Okay, the brothers are not saying that Yaakov said he would go to hell if Binyamin died. All right, that's a Christian European Americanized translation of or change of the meaning to meet their doctrine. That is not what he said. It says, now if I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, since his own life is so bound up with his, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will send the white head of your servant our father down to Sheol in grief. Okay? Literally, they're saying that Yaakov's life is intertwined with Binyamin's life. They're saying that Yaakov loves Binyamin so much that what hurts Binyamin hurts Yaakov. And I've heard it said that this was a very, it indicates it was a very unhealthy, um, codependent kind of relationship. I don't believe that's what we're talking about here. I believe that when Yaakov looked at Binyamin, he saw 2 other people whom he dearly loved who he had lost. He saw Rachel, his mother, and he also saw Yosef. Because if any one of those brothers looked like Yosef enough to remind him of him, it's going to be Binyamin, because they shared not only a father but a mother. Okay? And you have to believe, or I have to believe, we have to think that look at my daughters who are sitting here. Okay, I tease them and I say, hey, you with your mother's face, come over here. Okay, if you look at them, they are almost the spitting images of their mother. So if my wife were to pass away, and one of those daughters was to pass away or be taken from me, as Yusuf was. And I looked at the remaining daughter. I could not help but think of those of her mother and her sister. Okay, I couldn't think. There would be no way to not do that. And so I believe, I don't believe that it was an unhealthy dependency. I believe that when he looked at them, he experienced all the joy of the great memories with Rachel and Yusuf, and also the sorrow of losing them. And it was just a remembrance thing. It says, now your servant has pledged himself for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, I shall stand guilty before my father forever. Therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave to my master instead of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go down to my father unless the boy is with me? Let me not be witness to the woe that would overtake my father. What an argument! What a plea! What an act of sacrifice! And as much as we see the typology of Mashiach in the giving of the grain and the giving back of the price of the grain, okay, I believe we also see a typology of Mashiach here, where the brother says, this brother of mine, this younger brother who came after me, he's in prison, going to be in prison. He's going to be a slave. There's no way he can ever purchase his freedom, but I will give up my freedom. I will give up my livelihood. I will give up all that I know in life, my wives, my children, my livestock, everything that is back in the land of the Canaanite. I will give all of that up. I will never see my father and brothers again, and I will do that so that this younger brother who has sinned, and he believed he had. From the text, I really believe he had. He believed that my younger brother who has done wrong can be free to go home to our father, and to go home and inherit. And this shows to me a huge amount of growth in the time since Yusuf was sold into slavery, because the reason they hated Yusuf was because he was destined to inherit all of the that was his father's. They would get pieces of it, but he would inherit the land. He would inherit the possessions of the huge, great flocks and everything. He wore the coat. They say it says many colors in most translations, but it was ribbons. Literally, it was stripes that indicated that he was the heir. Okay, and so they hated him for that. And now here's one of those same brothers saying, I will give up my life and all that I own and all that I know, so that the inheritor, who, because Yusuf they thought was dead, Benjamin became the inheritor. It says, I will give up everything so that he can go inherit what should have been mine. And if that's not a messianic typology, I don't know what is.